How powerful is the phrase, I love you?
I love you.
Hi, this is Neil with Other People's Shoes. I want to call your attention to a new app that I've discovered called World Love Bank. Now, let me tell you something really quick. There's something powerful about the phrase, I love you. It can do wonders to our mental health. It can just make us feel like we matter and that we value that person that we say it to. Now think about this for a second. Think about the person you love most in this world. Got him? Now imagine just for a brief moment. Imagine if you could never hear the words, I love you, ever again. That's what World Love Bank is all about. See, what they're doing is they're capturing the I love yous from loved ones that you can go back in and go into that bank like a savings account and withdraw that I love you, even if that loved one is passed, because maybe that loved one has banked their I love you and it'll be there forever. So think about that. Check it out right now. World Love Bank on your favorite app store of choice, whether that be Apple iOS or Android Google Play. Check it out now. World Love Bank.
I love you.
Hey, come take a walk with me, not like you used to do. Do something different and put yourself in other people's shoes. Open up your mind and open up your eyes and change your direction, change your perspective.
Welcome into Other People's Shoes. As you know, I am your host, Neil Matthews. Thank you so much for joining me today. Super excited that you have chosen to hit play on that proverbial podcast player of choice. Whether that be Amazon, iTunes, wherever you're listening today, really appreciate it. Want to say thank you for that. Also want to say thank you to my guest today. Super excited about my guest today. In fact, let me help introduce them to you. Isn't it always nice when you're introduced to somebody like, hey, this is so-and-so. Hey, this is what they're all about. Let me help with that. So today, my guest, I have two of them. So we're in two pairs of shoes today. He calls himself a Gen Xer. She is a millennial. In fact, what in the world could they possibly have in common? It actually turns out quite a bit. In fact, they used to do morning radio together, and now they're doing this amazing podcast called Steve and Bethany Hopecast. So help me welcome him in from the great state of Arkansas, crossing another state off of our list. Don't be confused. It's Steve and Bethany. John and Bethany, how are you guys?
Hey, let me tell you first of all, Neil, that this is why you shouldn't let Steve talk first, because this is what happens when he starts the Zoom interview. You can expect an insult. So this is why I should always talk first. That's why.
Well, and I even call him by his wrong name. So there's that also.
You got your little payback there.
Completely okay. I'm just glad to be on your show, Brad.
Oh, now you want to be all humble pie and just rocking the humility. And so I look like the JERK. We can't even say that word. We have to spell it out. That's how bad it is, right? Well, guys, I'm excited to have you here today. In all seriousness, it's fun. It's fun to connect with folks. So let's start with this. Ladies first. Now, Bethany, we usually like to ask ladies like what style of shoe they like to wear. I used to do shoe size, but I've heard that's offensive. So we're just going to stick with style of shoe. So what style of shoe do you like to wear?
Well, I'm not offended by the shoe size. I'm a 7.5. I'll be upfront about that. I prefer anything flat. So I'm a flat shoe person. Some girls like heels. That's so not me. I actually had a wedding I needed to help out with. My husband's cousin got married this past weekend. And so I was helping out with that. I was in heels the whole weekend. My feet, I'm paying for it now. It's not good. So my favorite shoe, my go-to, I wear white leather sneakers. They're boring. They're simple, but that's my go-to.
Is there a style or brand on those white leather sneakers? Trying to get sponsorship dollars here. Bethany, help me out.
I think they're Cole Haan. That's my favorite. Yeah, they're Cole Haan.
And you, my friend, what are we rocking? What are we wearing? Shoe size and style?
Shoe size is about 11s. What I've got on right now is Nikes. They're the Runmax, I think is what they're called. And it's really pretty neat, the design of them, because they actually have like airflow. So when you're like walking and the wind blows, it kind of flows through your foot a little bit. Kind of gives you a cool little sensation. So I'm digging those, man.
That's awesome. I typically am wearing Jordans. Today I'm just wearing socks because I haven't gone anywhere yet. So usually that's when I put on the shoes. shoes. There's like upwards of 50 pairs though.
Yeah.
So there's a few to choose from. These are just the ones that like the camera time, if you will.
I can see.
Yeah. These ones up here, I'll turn my camera just a little bit. Those ones up on the top there have only been worn a dozen times. I might have a problem. Well, let's get into you guys because I'm excited about this season. How it all comes about is I'm literally tying my shoe one day and I'm looking at the plastic thing at the end of my shoe and I'm like, wait, Phineas and Ferb reminded me, what is this? Oh, it's an aglid. Thank you, Phineas and Ferb. Thank you, Disney Channel, for reminding me what that is. But it's that plastic thing at the end of your shoelace. Sometimes it's metal. Jordan's, it's a harder plastic, which I really appreciate. But it keeps the shoelace from unraveling. And I started to think, as lame as this may sound, I started to think, like, what's that one thing that keeps people from unraveling? And I thought, we'll just kind of shove that aside and we'll just move on. But I kept like hearing stories of people saying, man, if it wasn't for this, if it wasn't for that, if it wasn't for this, whatever. And I'm like, let's go back to that aglid thing because I think so many times people forget about that. So for you guys, separately, maybe collectively, what is that aglid for you guys?
I think for me, I was thinking about this question and pondering this question. I think for me, it's community, having the right people that are there and are encouraging to me and keep me on the right place and on the right track. This last, or I guess it's the last 2 years, my husband and I were church hunting, which is every Christian's, favorite pastime. So not the case. It's not a fun thing to try and find a church and find what fits and everything, especially at the time, the middle of a global pandemic and, churches are trying to figure out how to function and all of that stuff. And so that was a really challenging season for us. We found a church that we made our home, and God was really gracious in just providing great people that came alongside us, and we have the chance now to lead a community group. And so, I think that was a prayer that God didn't answer right away. When my husband and I first got married, I that was kind of a consistent prayer of mine, is that the Lord would provide solid couples that we could be friends with, that could encourage us. And that wasn't a prayer that was answered super quickly or maybe in the time frame that I wanted. But I think in the past couple years, I've seen the Lord just be really faithful in providing that for us. And so we're really grateful to have those kind of core people to surround us, to call us out, to speak truth to us, and to just be an encouragement when we need it. So for me, I think it's been our community group and the people that we have in it.
Hey, Steve, how about you? What's your aglid?
Well, I would think, first of all, I think I speak for Bethany as well when we say that for both of us, it's our faith. I mean, that's the main thing, but we're going to try to pivot and talk about something just besides the faith. So this would be number two in that. For me, I like to think, this may sound weird, but I really think it's my job. I really like what I do. I feel like called to do it. I feel like I have a lot of things to give, and I really feel satisfied in my line of work. It's something I've always wanted to do since I was, a little kid. I would listen to the radio and I would think, wow, how cool is that? And then it'd be like, no, real people don't have radio jobs. That has to be somebody special. And I've proven that absolutely it's not anybody special. Any trained monkey can do this. But I do have a passion for it, and I've done it since I was, I answered an ad in a newspaper. Remember those newspapers? The newspaper, and started at 19 years old. I've just been doing it ever since. I have just found such joy and satisfaction. And even on the most stressful days, like right now, the last couple of days, just to be real honest here around this place, has been really stressful. It still beats doing anything else. I would be miserable and have been miserable at any other job, wishing I was working in radio. So I would say my job.
That's so interesting you would say that, because I think there's two things that go together there. Even in our jobs, we have to have that community. And if we don't have that community in our job, we don't probably want to be there very long. I've worked for places too, Fortune 500 companies, where it didn't feel great to go to work. It didn't care if I loved it or not. And I've had some jobs that I've loved. I know, much to my wife's chagrin, she's like, is there a job that you've loved? She's like fact checking me right now, because I don't think there is in her mind. But there have been a few. But I do know the ones that I really enjoyed going to, even when I hate to say it, even when the day sucked, it still was nice because you had that community, you had that coworkers around you, you had that support system around you. But Bethany, I want to go back to what you said, because I think for those outside of, we'll call it air quote faith, they don't understand the struggle is truly real when you go to a new church. It's like starting school. I mean, that's probably the best analogy I have, is starting even a new job. Really, the first day of school, like you're so nervous. You're like, are my kids going to behave? Am I going to like the worship? What if the pastor doesn't preach out of the denominational Bible that I was told told that he needs to preach out of? What if he's teaching out of the message? Oh, we can't handle that. Oh, what if the guitar player doesn't have the black guitar? He has the sunburst guitar. I can't stand it. You know, I'm being obviously very ridiculous, but there are people that are like that.
Yeah.
Right or wrong, there are. But what was it for you that was such a struggle for you in that regard?
I think it was just us wanting to be, sensitive to the Holy Spirit and to the Lord's leading, not just finding a church that had the kind of worship that we liked, or, oh, they have, all these great programs that we could jump into, because those things are great, but that's not ultimately what the foundation of a church is. It needs to be a place where you feel like you can serve and encourage other people, and those people can encourage you. I think there needs to be kind of a mutual building up, but also, alongside that, I think that it's just challenging to feel like every week you have to start over. Use the analogy of starting school. That's exactly how it feels like. You have to start over with people every single week and explain what you do for a living and what your hobbies are, and kind of make small talk. Don't get me wrong. I think, small talk has its place. It's not a bad thing completely. I think as Christians, we're meant for more, and we're meant for deeper relationships. And so for me, this is just my impatient side showing, but it was challenging, I think, to go every single week and feel like these people don't really know me. I don't really know these people. We're going to get there at some point, but for right now, we're kind of at this surface level, and I have to just push through that and kind of be patient until we landed a church. For us, it was really just about asking the Lord, like, clearly show us where we need to go. And I'll be honest, there were times where we didn't feel like we had a clear direction. It was just kind of, this is a good church, but is this where God wants us? And we didn't really have a yes or no there. And so I think it was discouraging. We looked for a church for about a little over 6 months, I think it was. And that's not as long as other people have looked for churches, I know, but even in that amount of time, it was still something that we had to kind of fight against, being discouraged and being impatient and all of those feelings that you feel when you're looking for a church.
But Steve, I'm wondering about you too, because even in the business of being in radio. I mean, you said yourself kind of in that introduction as you were describing your aglet. For me, when I think about that, I think about the jobs. I mean, I probably have had about as many jobs as I've had probably pairs of shoes, truly, not metaphorically, but in all actuality. I've had a lot of jobs. I've done a lot of stupid stuff. I've worked for a lot of stupid people and some amazing people. I'm the stupid person sometimes, but nonetheless, it's about you in this moment. In that, don't you think what she's saying kind of resonates on the job front as well for you, is finding that good fit, finding that fulfillment, finding that, and especially now that we've kind of reset as a pandemic, why do you think that's so important for folks to really find that niche, that spot for them?
Well, I do. I think it's absolutely important. And I think what makes radio a little bit unique, in fact, that even though I may be working with some people that I don't like and have a hard time dealing with, I do have those 3 to 4 hours on the air where I get to connect with people, with real people just listening. And that always has been the one thing that really satisfies me probably more than anything else, is to be able to be that friend to somebody that's driving around. And it doesn't matter the format. Now I'm working in Christian radio, which is such a big blessing, but I've worked in secular radio, mainstream, whatever you want to call it, for a lot of years too. And yeah, there's a lot of people that I've worked for that are great. A lot of people, not so much, but I always had that solace of being able to have that time where it's just me and the listener and being able to connect. So that makes it a little bit different. But yes, going back to there's nothing worse than going to a job that you can't stand, that you hate, because whether it's not fulfilling for you, whether it's too stressful, whether it just doesn't line up with your beliefs, whatever the reason is, it's incredibly difficult when you wake up every morning and you get to work and you're looking at your watch going, okay, I got only 3 hours till lunch. 4 hours to lunch. That's hard. I've been there too. I've had to work other jobs at the same time. So I've been there. It's no fun at all. Yes, when you can find a community of people to be able to really feel like you're a part of a team. And Bethany's point is, a church, whether you're at a team at a job where you feel like everybody's on the same page or all pulling in the same direction. I mean, that's the sweet spot. That's what you really want.
I just see the comparison almost like two lines going down the paper together. If you're not a church person, if you are a church person, the key really to it all, I think that we're all saying, is this community idea. But what's the damage if you come into a community damaged? Like, what can happen from your different points of view on that?
If you come into a community of people, or you're, becoming friends with people, and you can come into it cynical because like it or not, whether somebody's a Christian or not, people are still people. So people that are, can be hurtful or can be harsh or overly critical, or maybe people that are well-intentioned, but they say something that kind of rubs you the wrong way. We're all going to interact with that at some point, unfortunately. I think there is a balance there of, you maybe want to have some discretion when you're getting to know people. Like, I think transparency is important, but you should also have discernment of how much do I share with this person? Is this person trustworthy? Can I be open with them, and can they be somebody that is going to have my back and be an encouragement to me? And so I think there's a balance there, and that's just something that you grow up or kind of grow into, I should say. You work up to it. So yeah, I think it's hard when you've been hurt before and you're making friends and trying to not be super cynical, but also be wise in what you say and what you share and things like that. I guess that's kind of the downside of living in a fallen world, right? We interact with people that aren't perfect. It's not fun.
Yeah, I think the downside of it is obviously, and again, this is so much easier said than done. The downside of it is if you come in wounded, if you come in hurt, whether it's to a job, to a church, especially, you got your guard up. Always, because you don't want to be hurt again. It's just human nature. It's just that kind of self-defense that God has kind of put into us. I think you got to be wise enough, like Bethany was saying, to say, okay, look, these people didn't hurt me. I've got to take a chance and trust a little bit. Now, that doesn't mean be an open book, I don't think, necessarily on the first meeting and tell somebody your life story from the time you introduce yourself. But I do think you've got to be a little bit vulnerable, I guess maybe is the right word, to just say, okay, I'm going to try to put myself out there. Because if you don't, I don't think it's doing yourself any favors or the other person. Because look, the thing about it is everybody loves to talk about themselves. I mean, that's the one thing that they're expert in is their self. So if you can drop your guard a little bit and allow that person in and to be able to say, hey, what about you? And then you share parts of your story too. I think that's the key. And again, it's taking a risk, but I think without the risk, there's no reward.
I know this is going to sound really maybe bizarre to some, but there's a guy that I have been fascinated with for years. He just actually moved into a jail cell out in North Carolina. So I'm excited that he gets to experience North Carolina. Sadly, he'll be in jail experiencing it. I'm trying to be funny there, and it's probably terrible. But the reason why I'm fascinated by this guy is maybe you guys have heard of him. He lived in Lincoln, Montana, which is this no-name town. I've asked people from Montana to describe Lincoln to me. It is very plain Jane. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot of bells and whistles there. It's pretty quiet. But this guy named Ted Kaczynski, yes, he is the Unabomber.
Mm-hmm.
And he lived in this cabin in Lincoln, Montana, and created his bombs that he would send to people in Lincoln, Montana, and then would send them out through various things when he would travel to other parts of the country by bus, by the way. Why am I fascinated by this guy? I know everybody's like, where are you going? He didn't have a community. He literally lived off the grid. He didn't have a cell phone. He, just kind of did all of his manifestos on his typewriter, which is still fascinating to me in and in itself, because I can't, spell check. There's no such thing. He had to be really good at spelling. But I say all that because to me, I look at him as the extreme on this, paradox of guy didn't have community. Guy didn't have anybody around him. What's the danger if you two didn't have community around you?
We talk about this a lot and have in our episodes, just in a general fact. I think that's the one thing, not to get super spiritual on this, the one thing the enemy tries to do, and that is make us feel alone, make us feel isolated. Now, in this case, the Unabomber has actually isolated himself on purpose, which is never healthy, because I do think we were created for community. I mean, God just didn't create one person and just leave them alone. He said, this one person needs somebody. And so he created a helpmate, a person to do life with. I think from that very start, that shows us the importance that God wants us to be together and to do things in a community group versus trying to go alone, because I think alone really can spell trouble.
Yeah. And I would second that. And I think alongside with that, I would say that being in community is a humbling experience. And that's something that we all need more of, because in our natural, selfish, sinful state, we're going to be incredibly prideful people. We're going to be self-centered, narcissistic people. That's where we go. And so I think being in community with other people allows us to not just be transparent and open and honest about our struggles and kind of say like, I'm dealing with this. Can you guys help me with this? Can you pray for me in this area? It also prevents us from, I think, wanting to kind of self-preserve and give off the impression that we're perfect or we have it all together. When people don't really know us, it's kind of like Instagram. Like Instagram's a highlight reel, right? And so you see everybody's good side on social media and that kind of thing. And but those people don't know us. Those people that follow us for the most part don't really know us. They see all the good stuff. And so I think when we isolate ourselves and don't have community, that's the impression that we give to the outside world. When people don't really know us, they don't know what we're walking through. So they think, oh, Bethany has it all together. Well, I certainly don't. I'll be the first to say that. And so I think having those people in our life that can really be, transparent with us and that we can be transparent with, it's a healthy thing. It keeps us from chasing perfection and chasing this unattainable standard that's not real or realistic.
Well, I know this about myself, and maybe you guys know this about yourselves. My dad spent quite a bit of time in the Marine Corps, retired as a United States Marine. That is like a badge of honor he wears. Every time I'm around him, like some people have their sports teams that they wear. I don't get that. Okay, I'm totally lying. I totally get that. But my dad probably has, if not more stuff Marine Corps related that I have North Carolina related. Like every time you see me, I'm probably wearing something North Carolina. My dad, he's always wearing something United States Marine. And in that, I have seen Marines in my interaction because they're proud of that. They're super excited about the fact that they're Marines. Maybe you've met some, I don't know. They're super excited about that. And every time I see Marine, my general like welcoming them or introducing myself to them, I'll always say Semper Fi.
Sure.
And immediately I get that back. Semper Fi. Ruh. And they'll say, oh, you're a Marine. And I'm like, no, sorry. Didn't mean to get you all excited. My dad was a Marine. And they're like, oh, well, where did he serve? What rank was he? Where did he? This list of all these places my dad has been. And it's interesting because that interaction I have with them, they immediately like want to be my friend. They immediately like want to be in that community with me. Don't you think, and I'm asking this from your guys' again, your perspective, what if Jesus was like that? What if we had this natural just kind of slogan grading like Semper Fi, but for Christians, I don't know what it would be. We'll have to come up with something. I'm not that creative on the spot. Jesus Christ. And we're like, and he saves. You know what I mean? Or God's good all the time, God's good. Like, what if we had that as Christians that brought us into that community that we knew right away where we were, like the Marines do? Like, I'll say to somebody that's a Tar Heels fan, I'm like, go Heels. And they're like, yeah, go Heels. You know what I mean? Are you following me on that?
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm an LSU Tiger guy, and so I'll see people wearing the go Tigers, and they turn around, look at me, you smile, go Tigers. Yeah, absolutely. I know what you're talking about. And really, you go back to the early church, and that's really what they had. They had the little ichthus fish. They put that out there so that people would know what kind of community and what's exactly going on in there. And it was kind of a secret society kind of thing in some of those cultures and some of those areas. Having said that, I don't know that I'm crazy about that idea for Christians in 2022. And the reason why I teach Sunday school class with fourth, fifth, sixth grade boys, we talk about, we're going through the Old Testament. So we talk about the Jewish people and how God called out that one man, Abraham, and his family. And his family was to be, God's people. People from around these other nations were supposed to look and see God's people to be able to say, oh, why do you do things so much differently than we do? And they were to open the circle and say, well, let me tell you about my God. Let me tell you why we serve him and the whole thing. And what happened was that's hard. It's easier to close it off and say, we got ours. It's our God and not you. And so you're out. We're not. So I think that's what we could lead to with that. I think we could actually do damage if we just kind of make it more of a click and like, oh yeah, we got their super little secret little code words and handshakes. And although secret handshakes are kind of cool, I don't think for a church necessarily.
Well, and this is just something to kind of think about. If there was this big identifying trait that all Christians had, if it was like wearing a North Carolina jersey every single day, if it was something like that came with being a Christian, you just automatically got this jersey on and you wore it all the time, would we live differently? Because I think, we say, oh yeah, you take your faith with you everywhere. You always represent Christ. It's always what you want to do. But how much do we actually live that out? Because I think if we had an identifying trait where everybody that saw us on the street would say, oh, that person's a Christian, we would probably carry ourselves a little bit differently. I think we would react differently when, somebody's being a jerk to us, or, someone cuts us off in traffic or something like that, I think we would probably carry ourselves in a different way. So that's just something to think about. It could be good or bad for sure.
Well, I mean, really, if you really drill down into this, I guess if where you do have one trait that's supposed to unite us as Christians, it would have to be, love. We'd have to be know us by our love and know us by what we're about and the way we treat people and the love we have for them. So I guess maybe in one way we do have that kind of secret element or trait for each one of the bodies of each person of the body of believers.
But I bet if you surveyed 100 people randomly, go to your Saturday market, and if I set up a little table and I was like, okay, come by, you get to be on a podcast, I've thought about doing this actually, and saying like, here's the word. When you hear this word, I'm not going to give you any context. I'm just going to give you the word. Here it is. What do you think of it? And if I said the word community to people, I wonder how long it would take me to hear the word Christian in the context of community, in all seriousness. Because I think so many times that word doesn't get associated with Christianity. And I actually don't even like the word Christian. I know it only appears 3 times in scripture and people are like, oh my gosh, Neil doesn't like Christian. No, hear me. So many faiths have taken that word and made it their own. Like we're saying, they've become that. They've adopted that when they don't know what that word really means. They think of it as like, again, the Marine Corps, LSU. I can't believe I just said LSU. They think of those things and they're like, we want to be associated with that, so we're going to use that word. I wonder how long it would take till we heard the word Christian. How many people with community and Christian?
I think that's a great point, and I've never really thought about it in those terms. You're right, and I think maybe that is kind of a failing that we've had as a body of believers, as a church, to not have that sense of community and to provide that for our people. And, they come to church. It's so much sometimes an individual thing. It's just a thing, at least here. I don't want to speak for everywhere, but we're here in the Bible Belt. There are people that have come to church their whole lives, and it's just something else they do. They get up in the morning, they brush their teeth, they take a shower, they play golf on Saturday, they come in to church on Sunday, or what, that's just kind of a routine habit. They don't really get plugged in to the community at large, I think is a big issue that we see here, right?
And I think, along with that, it takes effort, kind of what you said, Steve, like you have to plug in. You can't just assume that you're going to immediately find community no matter where you are. I think it's one of those things where you have to put some effort in and you have to put the time in, because it won't happen automatically. It takes time and effort and some work there. And so it's not always easy, but it's worth it for sure.
It absolutely is worth it. And I guess that's what I was trying to say is, to me, when I hear that, is like, how long would we have to wait to hear? And would it be the first 100? Would it be 1,000? Would it be? I would love to do that.
It would probably take a lot longer than what we want to admit.
and I think that's the key, right? Is like everywhere I've ever gone, all of my friends have always associated me with the University of North Carolina, because undoubtedly I'm wearing something North Carolina. A friend of mine recently kind of pushed on that really hard, and it hurt. But again, that's what friends do. Talking about community, that's what they do. They push on stuff. And he said, do you want to be more associated with North Carolina or Jesus? I was like, well, Dad, Jesus. He goes, then show it. You're not my friend anymore. We're not friends. I unfriended you on Facebook, so now we're officially not friends. Guys, as we start to wrap up today, I want to give you an opportunity. I know you guys are creating stuff. You guys are doing stuff. You guys are doing some amazing stuff. Tell us about that, and then we'll play a game together.
Sounds good. So Steve and I are former radio people. So we used to do a morning show together, and that's how we first met. And so we've been friends ever since, and then decided to launch a podcast together. And so our podcast is called Steve and Bethany's Hopecast. And the purpose of it is to take those big complex questions about life and faith and put them in simple terms that are easy to understand. And we also have a lot of fun. So that's the heart of our podcast. That's what we're all about.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just been so much fun for us because she's a millennial, I'm a Gen Xer, and to have the two kind of perspectives. She's relatively, the way I look at it, relatively newly married, 3 years? Like that.
4 years. Come on with it.
Well, I've been married, almost 25. And so it's just that different looks at life that we can bring to this podcast. And then to be able to take things that people hear about on Sunday mornings and they think, okay, I want to know how to do that. I want to be able to have that be true in my life, but just don't know how. And we try to give some practical ways in which to do it. And like she said, we try to have some fun with it along the way too. And you can find it at StephenBethany.com. That's Steve and Bethany. runmaxlaundry.com.
Good plug. Good job, buddy.
I love the plug. You got to have the plug in there. Absolutely. All right. So here we go, guys. We're going to play this fun game together. We call it Senseless. So it is just a series of 5 random questions. 6th is the wild card, all kind of revolving around our 5 senses. So here we go. I'm going to roll. Apparently, they were out of stock on the LSU Tiger Cup. I don't know. So, I mean, do you want to send me one? Do you care if I roll? I mean, do you think I'm going to cheat on you?
Oh, go ahead.
All right, just checking. All right, I'm going to roll for you guys. Here you go. So, Bethany, this is your roll. You get a number 3, and it's this. What's that smell when you get a whiff of it? You have to smell more of it.
Probably freshly washed clothes, like the fresh laundry smell. I think it reminds me of being a kid, and one of my chores when I was little was to fold clothes. And so I think it kind of takes me back to that. It reminds me of my mom. I don't know. Yeah, like laundry smell, that.
You know what? There's no judgment on smells or things or anything like that. So, I promise.
I had a flashback to my classic rock days, and I thought, oh, Skinner, that smell. There you go. Leonard Skinner. What do I win?
You don't win anything. Sorry. You weren't the 9th caller. All right, Steve, this one is for you. Again, no LSU Cup has been harmed in the taping of this show. All right, here we go. Number 6 is this. It's our wild card. So you get the wild card, which is fun. What's one person? Well, only one. Do not bring 2. It is only you and this person, by the way. So one person you would love to spend the weekend with, and what would you do?
Okay, so is there a caveat to here where it's, obviously, like I would want to pick my wife. Is that
just pick your wife? Pick your wife.
I mean, is that too?
The answer is always Jesus or your wife.
Right,
by the way.
Right. So I mean, is that too like Sunday school answer, or should I do something else?
No, whatever you want, buddy.
Well, okay, just 100% honest, it would be my wife. I mean, she's just my best friend, and there's nobody. I mean, we were friends from the very beginning, and so there was nobody I ever wanted to hang out with anyway more than her. And so yeah, it would be her. What would we do? I don't know. I mean, I'll tell you what we're thinking about doing here. We are getting close to our 25th anniversary. So we had some friends that just went to Italy and took an amazing tour of Italy. I would love to do that.
That's awesome. I love you guys. Thanks for doing this.
Hey, thanks.
And thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, this was painless, man. This was great.
All right, kids and campers, that is it. That is all. That is the end of our show today. Wow. What's your takeaway? Well, I have a few. Maybe yours are like mine. Maybe they're not. What does community mean to you? Do you have one? Do you have those people around you that truly support you and love you? Are they supporting you? Are they encouraging you? Are they pushing up against stuff when it's hard? Do you have those people to turn to, or are you like my buddy Ted, who's in Lincoln, who doesn't have anybody? Now, I know that's the extreme. Listen, I hear you. That is the extreme. But maybe for some of you, we just walked out of the Shadow series a couple of months back. Maybe that was that shadow for you because you felt like you weren't enough. We talked about that as well. But I'm going to challenge you today. I'm going to challenge you in this. Find a community. Find some people around you to agree, to not just agree, but really push on what you have always thought, that different perspective on life. And speaking of that, let's talk about that. Remember, do not ever forget, remember, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. Thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned till next week when we walk in other people's shoes.